done. Okay, my PPTs is visible, na? Fine. Hello.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay, fine. So we'll start with some relationship. Last day we had cover some association relationship. Now we'll cover the dependency relationship. So this slide I have taken from the University of North Florida. So you can find this PPT from the University of North Florida. So I'll thank for those university for providing this on the public platform. So starting with the relationship which is associated with the dependency. So what is dependency relationship is actually is. So dependency is a directed relationship you can find here. So this is an directed relationship which is used to show that some UML elements. So we are having some UML elements like class and components and we can say packages here available. So that shows some element or a set of elements that requires needs or depends on the other model for the specification or the implementation, because this dependency is just like here a supplier and a client. So supplier and the client relationship where this supplier here, so this supplier provides something to this client, and thus this client in some sense is just an incomplete, while uh, we can say that it is semantically or structurally dependent on the supplier. So if we are going some modification in the supplier, that may impact on the client. So when we are going for this relationship, so this dependency relationship is between named elements. So we are having some named elements like these classes here. So dependency is in between classes, or in between the interfaces, or in between the components, or in between artifacts available or packages available. So we are having various kinds of dependencies available in our UML diagram. So we are having this type of dependencies are available here. So you can find this dependency relationship dependency here. So first on the top, this is a dependency relations which is present as a dotted line and which points to some direction. So we are having three different relationships here available. First is a usage relationship, second one is abstraction relationship, and third one is the deployment relationships. I will not go in much detail, so we'll cover this on the later part, but just consider some relationship here. So what is the usage relationship? So usage is a dependency. So this is a dependency in which named elements, so we are having named elements like client. So named element requires another named elements like supplier for its full definition or the implementation. So what we can say that we require supplier for existence of this client or the dependent entity. While in case of abstraction, so this abstraction relates two elements representing the same concept, but they are on a different level of abstraction available. So we are having different types of abstraction level. For an example, you have considered some TCP/IP protocol suite. So the upper layer and the lower layer, so one layer is dependent on the another layer for the usage, while this different layer provides some levels of abstraction here. So this is an abstraction dependency, while considering the third type of dependency, which is this deployment. So this deployment is a dependency which shows the allocation of an artifact to deployment target. For example, this is just not an association, but we can say that this is a directed relationship. So when we try to differentiate different dependency, we can say that this dependency is we put stereotype use for the usage, while we use the abstraction stereotype for the abstraction, while we use deploy stereotype for the deployment. So these dependencies are available in the UML specification of 2.4.1 and the later versions. So when we are going for dependency, so dependency is generally shown as dashed arrow. So we'll use this dashed arrow uh, that points toward clients, pointing from the clients, where the tail tail is at the client, and it points to the supplier. So when we are going from this, so tail is towards the client, and this arrow points toward the supplier. So this arrow may be labeled in the optional stereotypes. So we are using this optional stereotypes available. If you don't want to give specific dependency level here, so you can use only the simple dependency here. Otherwise, if you want to mention the usage abstraction and the deployment dependency here, you can put stereotype here, and you can go for different dependencies over here. So dependency could be a several kinds of the UML diagram. So first it can be a class diagram, or for the composite structure diagram, or the package diagram, or the component diagram, or the deployment diagram, and so on. So when we are going for the usage dependency is the relationship here. So this usage dependency, the relationship in which one elements, let's say we are going for next slide. So in case of usage relationship, this one element requires the another elements for this full implementation or the operation. So the usage dependency does not specify how the client uses the supplier, other than the fact that the supplier is used by the definition or the implementation of the client. For an example, we can say that some methods from the client classes use the objects of the another class, like the class of the supplier. So when we are try to put an usage dependency, we'll use a stereotype use over this dependency relationship. So this will give you dependency relationship here. When we are going for the create dependency level, so in this diagram, so we'll go for create. So this is a special case of usage. So we are different special cases like create, instantiate, and call, and the send. So we are having an required interface. So these are the special cases of different types of usage relationship over here. So this create is a usage dependency that denotes the client creates the instance of the supplier. So it denotes that the standard stereotype with create. So what is the main usage? So main usage is of the client create usage dependency is that the client, that's it, this client creates the instance of this supplier. So will create the instance of this supplier class in this client class. So this create may relate an instance to the constructor of a class, or describing the single return construction operation, and so on. So this is just a simple one type of relationship. I will not consider all those types of relationship here. We'll consider in the later part of our syllabus. So we'll go for the next types of relationship, which is known as generalization. So what is a generalization? So generalization is a kind of relationship here. So when we are going for generalization relationship, so it represents that the super class. So this is a super and subclass type of relationship available here. So it shares its common behavior attributes to subclasses, where it will provide a hierarchy of abstraction to the subclasses. So subclasses inherits their properties, behaviors, identities, and so on from the super classes. So we can have different types of hierarchies available. So we can have a single inheritance, while we can have multiple inheritance here. So this is just an easy kind of relationship. While we are going for, so this is an example of simple inheritance. So we have some main account in our bank. So it has some attributes like a balance, or the name of the account number, and so on. So this main account, so this provides an high level of abstraction. So which is having a account, while we are having two different types of account, while this is a saving account, or this is a recurrent account, or this is checking account, and so on. So when we are providing a high level of abstraction, so we can provide a balance, or the name or number that are being available in all sorts of all types of accounts. So these are being common, and she will put in the higher level of abstraction, and will put some methods over here that are common to the all the methods. So we'll provide a withdraw and the create statement in the super class, while we can have some withdraw money, get interest, or withdraw money, or other functions which are available in the special in the subclasses. So this, let's say this is saving class. So this saving classes has the properties that is known as get interest on WD money, while it also considers the withdraw and the create statement functions too. And in addition to that, if we don't specify the additional attributes here, so it uh, inherits different attributes from the super classes. So usually if these are if this is of 2 bytes and it is of 2 bytes and it is of 2 bytes, so it also gets the 6 bytes of information from the super class. And in addition, it has it has 4 operations available for here. So we'll put generalization as an uh, uh, triangle on the arrow. So this arrow or this triangle points toward the superclass, while we don't have any special symbol for the subclasses over here. In addition to that, we can have multiplicity, navigability, and so on. So we don't go for navigability, but we can have a multiplicity available here. So let's take an example of multiple inheritance here. So let's say we are having 2 different types of classes. First is a flying thing, and second one is an animal class. Then for the flying things, 3 classes inherits this flying thing. So one is, let's say, Sukhoi, second one is a MiG, and third one is a bird. While bird also inherits the animal class or the wolf class. Wolf class also inherits the animal, or horse is an animal. So this provides a different multiple inheritance. So when we are going for the multiple inheritance, we have to take some cautions that we don't get a similar type of attributes from all different super classes for an subclass. So we have to take cautions for this multiple inheritance. So again, question is that what gets inherited from the superclass. So when we are going for the subclass, this subclass gets its parent attributes, operation, relationship, identities, and so on. We are not going for the language specification that we are having public, protected, wide, and no access modifier here. We are just going for the methodology. So for in this methodology, a subclass gets the attributes from its parent classes, or the operation, or the relationship with the other classes. So we are having different attributes. So in addition to that, a subclass can add its properties, behavior, and relationship with another classes, or it can redefine the properties and it can redefine the behavior of its classes. That is, it can modify the operation of a superclass in its definition. So in this way we get the hierarchy. And when we are going from uh, uh, this approach, so this is a generalization, while the just reverse of the generalization is case of the specialization, where this flying thing is a general class, where Sukhoi, MiG, or bird is a specialization of this flying things. So this is specialization is also is a kind of relationship, where this is just an reverse direction of the generalization. So next properties what get inherited. So let's say again we'll take an example. So let's say we are having a class known as vehicle. So vehicle has weight or the registration number over here, and a main. So this vehicle has an association with the association relationship with the main, with the property name, with the stereotype owner. So man is a owner of vehicle, and one man can have 0 or many vehicles over here. So in addition to that, so this vehicle is a super class, and it has a attributes of weight and number, and the behavior is submit text for that vehicle. In addition to that, it is having an association relationship with the main. So a main can have uh, multiple vehicles. Now when we are going for the subclasses, so this subclass inherits the property of weight and number. In addition to that, it can add model over here. So and in addition, as well as it is having a text property available here. So so when we are going for this class car, so it gets the properties weight and number, and in addition to that, it is having a model where it inherits the text property, sorry, text behavior from the vehicle. In addition to that, it also having a relationship with the main classes. So this subclass gets attributes, properties, sorry, attributes, behavior, and the relationship with the other classes from the super classes. Fine. So this is just an relationship. While this is an whole part relationship, this is an aggregation. So truck are the whole and dumper are the simple part, or we can say that this is not a dumper. We can say that this is a trailer for this truck. So when we are having truck, so this truck has trailer over here. Then next we'll go for relationship. This is an realization relationship. So what is an realization relationship? So this is an using relationship where uh, a realization class use the overall class provider. So this is just a contract. So one class provides some information to another class, and another class agrees to implement all sorts of things that contract provider provides that information. So let's say realization this relationship exists in between interfaces and other entities of the UML diagrams, UML models. So let's say this interfaces is realized by a class, or this interface is realized from the this class, or this interfaces is realized by the subsystem, or this interface is realized by the components. So what are the different interfaces? Definition of this signature of this interfaces is available. So this class implements all those things, and to use the definition of class, instead of providing whole definition or implement the modularity as well as encapsulation, will provide in interface for this class. So any user and the client of this class will provide interface, and all those classes will use this interface as an interface uh, and this class will realize all the functionalities of interface in this class, or in this subsystem, or in this component. So we have two different types of diagrams for the realization. First is this elided form or the lollipop form, so which is just we represent this interface as a round circle, while when we are going for the canonical form, we can use on the use case diagram. So we'll cover in use case diagram in the second unit. So this use case, for the use case, this use case is just a provider or contract provider, while this use case, another use case will implement all the functionalities of this use case one. So this is just an realization relationship. So now considering all those relationships and creating an sales example diagram. So on the top we are in, so first class is just an sale class, and we are having some association with different classes, like with the salesperson, this association is the seller, while with the customer the association is the buyer, and with the products this is the number of items sold, and then vehicle, so vehicle provides a shipping mechanism association with the sale. While for the customer we are having two types of the customer. So corporate is a customer. In addition to that, individual is also an customer. So this type of the relationship are the association relationship with the named association, while this relationship is an inheritance relationship or the generalization relationship. So this is an is a relationship, and again this is a truck is a vehicle and train is a vehicle, so we are having an is a relationship. Now if you want to add some additional information in this diagram, so has to complete the modularity, so we can add just a simple another mechanism. So we can have some benefit for this is that we can additionally add or increment or update our model as easily as possible, which is not available in the methodology of waterfall software engineering processes model. Then, so this is different types of relationships available. Now we will going for the next topic of our syllabus is the object origin of the object orientation and the brief history of the object orientation. So we'll start with the brief history. So what is the need of object orientation? So first is the increasing abstraction. So while there is a study and the increase in the level of abstraction at which the programmers have been able to operate. So when we are going for the increase in abstraction, so this increase in abstraction applies both to the activity of the programming itself and to the tasks that the computer programs are expected to perform. So the increasing level of abstraction is summarized in this table. So we are having different types of periods. So right from 1940s to 1990s, we are having different programming languages available, which is starting with the machine code, and then we are having assembly languages, and then we are mature third generation languages like Fortran and the COBOL. Then we are going for some non-procedural language in 1970s like Ada and the Simula. Then in the early 1980s, we have some early object-oriented languages like Smalltalk, FL, and later in the 1980s, we are having C++ available. In 1990s, we are having in early 1990s, we are having Java, and in the later part of the 1990s, Python is available as an object-oriented language. So when we are in 1940s, so we are just going some hardware input available with the machine level languages, and we are stuck to only military and scientific applications. Even these are the large scale applications, but we are stuck to machine level code in the 1940s. Well, when we move to the 1950s, we are having third generation of languages, and what the interface technology available is, we are having only the punch tag or the and punched cards are available. We don't have any PC available at that time. So PC is not introduced. The PC are introduced in the 1980s. So by the IBM and the Apple. So Apple has a Lisa computer known early 1980s. So Apple introduces Lisa as his first computer. Then so in 1950s, we are having some simple commercial softwares like a planning program or something like that. Then in 1960s, we are having some punch card, and even we are having teleprinters which are supported by Fortran and the COBOL. So we are having early commercial systems like an account system or the payroll system, or even scientific applications are even possible to do, possible for development. Then we started in a non-procedural language in 1970s. So right from this table, we can see that we are having different levels of abstraction available, and this abstraction level is increasing, and we are having some more specific type of languages available, and thus it provides the necessity of the object orientation language while with the increasing level of abstraction here. Then the second reason is the event-driven programming. So in the early works of the computer simulation, and that leads to the object orientation. That is, we are having some collaborating objects available in the event-driven programming that communicate via these messages. So in case of event-driven programming, all objects that are collaborating with each other are communicating with different types of messages available. But the real world problem is that they are being modeled by our information systems. When we are going for the real world, our real world information systems are too complex, but when we are going for event driven programming, these models are simple sorts of information system. So in real world examples or real world complex system, it may consist of number of independent agents. When we are considering them, these agents individually, it seems to be very simple. But when we are going as a whole collection of different agents, this seems to be a huge problem, and we can't program it in the third generation language or the event driven programming language. So one solution is that which is being provided by the Simula 67 is structure your program in the similar way that the problem is available as it is. So as a set of independent software agents, each of these objects represents as an agent in the real world, and this is the key for the uh, object orientation development. Then comes another key points for the origin of the object orientation is the spread of GUIs. So in the early 90s, when we are having Microsoft Windows that provides a GUI for you, so it provides the rapid growth of GUI, which arises a new problem for the contemporary development methods like waterfall model and so on. So these GUIs are presented in the computer screen that offers many alternative actions all at once. And all these actions are carried out by just one click or two click of the mouse. For an example, we can reach to another options by one or two mouse clicks by using either combo box or the list box or the drop down boxes or menus and so on. So we are having different options available. So for the interface designer, the problem is that we have to anticipate all the possible routes that has been shown from your GUI. So all the desktop application available over there is difficult to design by using the procedural language. So again, this is a key idea for the origin of the object orientation. So the main thing is that we have to anticipate all the routes. Then again, the next thing that comes is the modular software. So in object orientation, the classes have two definitions, right from the external perspective as well as the internal perspective. When we are going for the external perspective, a class is defined in the terms of interfaces. It means that other objects only knows the offered services and the signature of those classes as a interfaces. While from the internal perspective, a class is defined in terms of what it knows and what it can do. So we have a clue that the large system can be built in the modular way and each part is largely independent. So what we are going to do is we have a system that are being independent. So we have solution for the intractable problem of the information system. So what are these intractable problem? First is it is easier to maintain a system that is built in the modular way as it changes in the as we are having some changes in the subsystems are much lessly like to be ripple the whole system. So we are having some rippling effect, and when we are having subsystem design, so we can reduce this rippling effect to overall system design. While another one is the upgrade problem. So when we are having the modular design, so any change in our subsystem, it will not affect the overall system design. And third one is the reliability. So because the subsystems are tested thoroughly in the isolation, so we can build a reliable system. So we are having modular design, so each and every subsystem or the components are can be tested in the isolation, and these are supposed to be independent, so we can have a reliable design. Similarly, we can implement increments in our system, and these increments are the manageable too. Then again, another issue that helps to in the evolvement of this object orientation is the life cycle problem. So what is the problem is with the early methodologies in the 1980s and 1990s are these are built upon the classical waterfall models. Even for the large scale application like military application or some space oriented application. So you already know the cons of the waterfall model, so I will not discuss the cons of the waterfall model. So the object orientation encourages a cycle development or the iterative and incremental model approach to address the all these above problems, that is being rippling and the upgrade and the reliable and the manageability of the various increments. The another issues that helps in the origin of object orientation is the model transition. So in structured approach or in procedural approach to the information system development, the models that are being developed during the analysis phase have only the indirect relationship with the models that are being developed in the design phases. So we are having different models and that are not directly related with the models that are in the analysis phase or in the design phase. So what is the problem? So problem is that even you have a very good design, but it is very harder to trace back the original requirements. So what we do is we need to avoid this transition problem by using correct set of models throughout the all phases, adding more details at each stage, and it leads to development of object-oriented technology. Then the last point, that origins to object orientation, is the reusable software. So information systems that are being developed are usually expensive in nature, and uh, we have to consider this expensiveness in terms of time and in terms of money too. So many times we have to require to reinvent a new solution from the older problem. So it requires times and money's requirement and time and money again and again. So it leads to the reusable software development, so we can make components that are reusable, and thus we are having some clues of origin of the object orientation technology. So then we'll go for modeling technologies. So how to go for modeling technology, and still uh, till now if you are having problems, so you can ask, otherwise I will go for the modeling concepts and so on. Any problem over here? Hello? Okay, fine. So I expect that no one has any problem. So we'll go for modeling concepts. So system analyst, the first question is that who are the producer and the producer of this model? So system analysts and the designer produce these models for the system. So business analyst will start by producing a model of how an organization works, while a system analyst will produce a more abstract model of the objects in the business and how they interact with one another. Now when going for the designer, a designer will produce a model of how a new computerized system will work within their organization. So in case of any information system development, the main focus is on the both analysis and design. So we'll consider analysis model and design models for the development. So what are the models? So we'll starting with the definition of the model. So what are the models? So these models are both abstract in nature, as well as these are visible for visible in all the phases of our software development. Then this model are quicker and easier to build a system. It helps uh, for the simulation purpose, and it helps to learn more about what the thing it represents. Then it can represent uh, all domains that we are going to develop. So this even in all domains you can have some imaginary parts or real entities. You can model all sorts of domain here. Then next is the diagram. So what are the diagrams? So again we are having a definition of diagrams. So a diagram is just a plain sketch or drawing or the outline designed to demonstrate how something works, to be clarifying the relationship between a part as a whole. In mathematics, this is a graphical representation of algebraic or the geometric relationship. For our purposes, this diagram is just a layout and the visualization of different modeling elements. This is described in the UML. So, uh, this models communicate ideas to another, or it helps to generate new ideas, or it can helps to make prediction, and helps to test our ideas, then it can helps to understand the structure and the relationships available. So when we are going for the diagram, so what diagrams are available in our UML models? So we are having three different types of diagrams available. So first we are going for the structural diagram. So first is in case of structure diagram, we are having first and class diagram. So this class diagram are the most common diagrams in the unified modeling language. They represent the static thing that exists in our system, their structure and their relationships. So they are typically used to depict the logical and the physical design of the system. So again, consider this represent the static thing of your system. So I am again saying that it represent the static thing and their structure and their interrelationship. We are not going for the dynamics. So dynamic things are being represented by the object diagrams. So when we are considering the class diagram, it depicts the logical and the physical design of your system. While in case of component diagram, this component diagram shows the organization and dependency among the different components. So they shows a system as it is implemented and how the pieces inside your system works together. So it represents different replaceable part of your system, and how this replaceable or the detachable parts communicates with each other and works together. Then we are going for the object diagram. So in case of object diagram, it shows the relationship between a set of objects in the system. So it represents the dynamicity of your diagram or dynamic things of your program. It shows the snapshot of your system at particular point. Then when we are going for deployment diagram, so this deployment diagram shows the physical runtime architecture of your system. So a deployment diagram can include description of your hardware and the software that resides in your information system. In addition to that, in case of UML2, we are having two uh, diagrams more. So first is a composite diagram. So composite structure diagram shows the internal structure of your model, while the package diagram depicts the dependencies between packages. So when we are going for package, a package is a model element that used to group together the other model elements. So then we are going for the behavioral diagram. So we are having different types of behavioral diagram available. First is an activity diagram that shows a flow of activity within a system. Then you often use this to describe your business process. Then we are going from the use case diagram. So this use case diagram addresses the business process that system will implement it. The use case describe the ways the system will work and who will interact in the system. So it usually represent the actor or the user of your system and main functionalities of your system. Then we are going for the state chart diagram. So state chart diagram contains states, transition, event and activities. Then it provides a dynamic view again, in addition to object diagram which represents a particular state of time, while state chart diagram will represent the dynamic view, and which is quite important when we are modeling an event driven behavior. Then we are having a collaboration diagram. So this collaboration diagram is just emphasize on how objects collaborate and interact with each other. Now then we will go for, where is my next slide? So then we'll go for sequence diagram. So in case of sequence diagram, this is again an interaction diagram. So it emphasizes the time of ordering of the messages between different elements of your system. Then in addition to that, we are having two more diagrams. First is a timing diagram. So in case of timing diagram, so in case of uh, timing diagram, so this is again an interaction diagram which depicts the detailed timing information and the changes to state or the condition of information which is being available. Then comes an Then comes interaction overview diagram. So in case of interaction overview diagram, we are having uh, so this just shows the overview of the flow of control of your different interactions being available. Then we'll go for the composite structure diagram and package diagram. So it just represents your different packages that are being available in your system. Now the question arises is that what is the difference between a model and a diagram? So when we are going to differentiate this model and diagram, so a model is just an abstraction that contains all the elements that are needed to describe the intention of the thing being the model. So it include all aspects concerning the business system relationship and so on, while in case of diagram it provides an specific view that what you are trying to understand in a specific context. So diagram are specific to context, while a model is just an abstraction. So when we are going for diagram, so diagram is one way of looking at some part of your model. So when we are going for the diagram this is just an specific part of your model, while model is just providing a higher level of abstraction. For example, if I am modeling a navigation system for vehicle, the system model will represent all parts of your whole system, entire system. When we are going for a specific diagram, it just contains the elements that deal with the let's say map or the error correction techniques or the navigation satellite or and so on. So we are having different models and different things here. Then so till now, if anyone has any problem